Welcome back to 34 Orgasms, the podcast where we talk about real intimacy. Today's episode brings us into the quiet, powerful rhythm of two people who've chosen a different path. Sara and Peter. Their story isn't loud. It doesn't scream for attention. But if you listen closely, you'll hear something rare. The sound of two people who meet without needing to prove anything. Two people who have made space for presence, for depth, for joy, not as a performance, but as a way of living. Sara is 46. She has a background in dance and healing work. Her body is her compass. But for much of her life, she ignored it. She gave too much, adjusted too often, until her body began to say no. Not in words, but in tension, in fatigue, in desire gone silent. Peter is 53, a man with two adult sons. He's walked through divorce, grief, and deep transformation. He doesn't talk much, but when he does, it's from the inside. He spent years trying to live up to a masculine ideal that never quite fit, until he realized that strength and softness doesn't cancel out each other. They deepen each other. They met not in a moment of drama, but in one of truth. A retreat, a breath, a shared glance, and something in them both said, "This is different." They don't live together, but they choose each other again and again. They move between her place and his, though sometimes about his space become the container for their early explorations. One evening, after hours of conversation about life, childhood, dreams, fears, something shifted. Sara was standing by the kitchen table, leaning back, laughing softly. Peter stepped in, not to claim her, but to witness her. He touched her arm, her breath, caught. He didn't ask, "Do you want to?" He simply stayed, present, waiting, attuned. And slowly it happened. She climbed onto the table, not to pose, but to surrender. They undressed each other with their eyes first, then with their hands. And there on the wooden surface between salt and breadcrumbs, they met. Not for the first time, but as if every touch until then had been a rehearsal. And it wasn't fast, it wasn't goal-driven, it was a slow exhale, a descent into something ancient and new at once. How often do we think we need the perfect setting? Candles, music, a getaway weekend. But what if it's not about the setting, but about the seeing? What if intimacy isn't built in exotic places, but on kitchen tables, in honest words, in unhurried evenings, in shared stillness? For Sara and Peter, sex is not an escape, it's a practice, a presence. They breathe together, touch each other with curiosity, speak with reverence, even in silence. Sometimes they invite a third person into their space, not to spice things up, but to expand what's already sacred. It's not a performance, it's a dialogue, a trio of awareness. They talk a lot, before and after. Boundaries are clear, desires are named, and in those rare shared moments, whether with a man or a woman, it's not about doing more, it's about feeling more, witnessing each other in a new light, trusting the body's yes and its no. For them, adding a third is never about fixing the relationship. It's an invitation, a co-creation, and always, always grounded in the bond between them. Sara says, "I didn't know I was allowed to want this much, or that someone could hold all of it, the hunger, the softness, the parts of me I hadn't dared show before." Peter adds, "It's not about performing, it's about returning. to your body, to the moment, to what's real. So before we wrap up, I want to welcome back Britta Kunze, who's a sexologist, relationship, and intimacy coach. And she's been listening very closely to the story about Sara and Peter. Welcome back, Britta.
Hello, Henrik.
So, what are your key takeaways from the story about Sara and Peter?
Well, my key takeaway is that if they were my clients, I mean, we have had some stories now of Linda or Andrea, which are like typical clients in terms of they come more from a problem-driven perspective. Yeah, and what I can see with Sara and Peter is really they are at a really good place already in the relationship. They have learned to communicate and to listen and to live their sexuality in a way where they feel seen, where they feel safe, where they can meet each other, where they can explore. And that's so, yeah, I think that's a beautiful place to start at.
You can work with the curiosity in one way.
Yeah, they're working with a curiosity, they're exploring. It's not about, oh, we're doing shitty, what can we change? It's more about, oh, we're doing great, but what could be even better? You know, what could be even nicer? And I think that's, of course, that's a beautiful point to start at.
Yeah.
And then another thing I took away from their story is I think it's so beautiful that they create these, I would call it conscious threesomes.
Yep.
So it's not about, which is also a common theme. I have some clients where the idea goes like this: oh, our sex life isn't working out the way we want it to, so why not invite another person?
Yeah.
And Sara and Peter, they're coming from a different angle. They're like, our sexuality is beautiful. Why not invite somebody else in and explore and witness who we are in the setting with another person, which is pretty advanced.
It's very advanced, and I would say that builds on a lot of good communication and trust to get to that point. And then what I believe actually Sara and Peter has been managing to cement between themselves. So
Yeah. Yeah, and also, I mean, my takeaway was, that they have the communication, they have clear rules, boundaries, setting, frameworks. And this is people, let's go a little bit for those threesomes because it's really something a lot of people fantasize about. Yeah, if you ask people, it's one of the main things, be it women or men, yeah, to have this abundance of people, to have three or maybe even more people joining.
yeah,
And I think it's this desire for abundance and playfulness. But then most people, if they really go for it consciously and they haven't established this trust, security, safety, communication, threesomes can be very stressy. Yeah.
yeah.
And
But,
so this is really beautiful what Sara and Peter created there.
so, what do you think men can learn from this episode with Sara and Peter?
A man can learn that your partner probably also wants to have a threesome.
If you communicate it in a good way, you establish trust, I guess, and then you can,
Yes. Yeah, because there's this fear, because it's such a common fantasy. Men feel, oh, it's such a common male fantasy. No, it's also a common female fantasy. Yeah.
what do you think are some of the major hurdles for people to get into that place where they build that trust?
Or you mean it's like the hurdles to not get to this trust, right? I think, well, the hurdles, there's some insecurity. Maybe I have some insecurity, like if my partner wants to have open up to another person, it means that I'm not enough. So one hurdle could be to really feel, "Oh, I'm with you and you're with me, and we are both good with that." And it's not about, we're not aiming to invite somebody else out of a feeling of lack, but out of a feeling of we have so much abundance to share and let's explore more. So that could be one hurdle. I'm sure there are a few other ones, but this is, yeah, I mean, you have hurdles in terms of jealousy, but jealousy also leads back to me not feeling worthy enough,
Right.
of having insecurities. It could be a hurdle to find somebody who's really open up for a conscious threesome. That can be a challenge. Yeah. Where it's about meeting each other, where it's about communication, and it's not just about acting out some kind of sex tape. That could be a hurdle.
Very
I don't
true.
know. Do you have another hurdle in mind, Henrik?
No, I think the insecurity one is definitely a key one, and I would say the jealousy one would be the one that I think
Yeah.
a lot of people might think they own their partner, whereas it's not coming from a place where you choose your partner every day. And I think
Yeah.
that's maybe one thing that it's worth thinking about.
Yep.
So, what do you think women can take with them from this episode with Sarah and Peter?
I keep circling back to the threesomes, but well, they can take away that it can be beautiful to have sex on the kitchen table between the breadcrumbs. That, I think that's one takeaway of the story. That a beautiful sexuality can happen in the mundane, in the everyday life, and that it can unfold a beauty, but also,
Being spontaneous.
yeah, but also taking away that it can be such a beautiful experience to explore how you are within your relationship. If you consciously invite another person into your sex life with your partner. Yeah, how it is to be with two men, how it is to be with two women. I mean, this is the same for men. Yeah, but what women can take away is to not limit themselves. To really, I think that was one important part also of Sarah, right? Of having the experience. I'm not too much. Maybe it was her wish. Yeah, I want to invite in another man. How does it feel like? I want to invite in another woman. How does it feel like? And to not limit yourself.
Very
That
true.
it's possible to create this within your relationship if you've done your work on the foundational pillars of communication, safety, and also having created a sex life that you both love. I think that's a beautiful point to come from entering threesomes and not coming from the lack.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm.
To Sarah and Peter, and to everyone daring to step beyond old rules, old wounds, old expectations. What they shared wasn't just passion, it was presence. A reminder that deep intimacy isn't something we achieve, but something we allow. They didn't arrive at the moment through techniques or labels. They arrived because they listened to each other, to the silence between them, to what the body says when it fully feels safe enough to open. And in that safety, pleasure becomes something more than physical. It becomes truth, connection, return. Not every relationship dares to go there. It takes maturity, surrender, play. It takes knowing that control is not strength, and that true power lies in the vulnerability shared, not guarded. So, this story reminds us you don't have to be fixed to be loved. You have to be willing to show up fully, honestly, and with heart. And remember, in book form, 34 Orgasms will go even deeper. These podcast episodes offer a taste, but the full stories unfold with more layers, more intimacy, more truth on the page. In our next episode, we will have Carrie L joining. She will be talking about how men have been taught to perform, but presence is what women actually crave. We will talk about slowing down, the fear of reaction, and why true intimacy can't exist without safety. From the Me Too era to mastering your own body, the next episode will make you rethink what it means to be a man. Until next time.